Hi, and welcome to She's the Boss, the show that is all about female founders and women doing extraordinary things in business. Now, if you like the show, please will you comment? Please will you subscribe to the channel because, we have lots more shows coming out every week and that way you'll be able to see them all. But today I am so excited because my guest is Noga Edelstein. And she has had an amazing journey and she's done all the things that most of us have wanted to do and come out the other end of it. I can hear you laughing, Noga. So let me introduce her. She is the co-founder of UrbanYou, and there's a whole story around that. She's the non-executive director of SBE, which is called Springboard Enterprises, I think, which is a fund for female founders. And she's a mentor/investor in StartMate. And that's, I imagine, only the tip of the iceberg. So welcome, Noga.
Thank you so much. What an introduction, Jules. I'm happy to be here.
I know. Well, can I tell you, I was reading your LinkedIn profile and I started going, oh my God, this woman. So you're amazing. So let's start off with what you're doing now. Can you tell everybody what it is that you do now and why you're doing it?
So right now I am becoming an investor, actually. I'm in the process of transitioning from, I transitioned from corporate life to startup life when I started my company, UrbanYou. And now I'm transitioning from being a founder into being an investor. So I've made about 7 angel investments and I've just joined a new seed stage fund, Black Nova Capital, as a venture partner.
Oh my God, I love you. I love that you're investing back into women as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, I knew that the first moment I spoke to you over the phone. So let's go back to Springboard. Let's go back even further. Can you talk to me about how your career has evolved? Because I think it's really inspiring for women to realize that, it's very rarely a straight line and that it's often a lot of wiggles and turns along the way. And I know you started as a lawyer. So let's go back to, I don't know, when Noga was leaving in high school or something. Were you always quite entrepreneurial?
Well, look, I wouldn't say I was. However, my father certainly was. He always had businesses. So he had market stalls at Paddy's Market selling shoes for most of, my childhood. He bought a soft drink factory at one point when, driving software in bottles around was still a thing. He had lots of little businesses. So I was always around that environment. But actually,
right, so
yeah.
Go on. I was just going to go, so you had this great role model, but go on, you were saying, but actually.
But actually, I wanted to be an actor when I was at school. And so actually in high school, I did that. I was a professional actor. I was in movies and TV shows. And when I left school, that's what I wanted to do.
Oh my God, hang on. You were a professional actor. So what were you acting in, like Neighbours and things like that?
Not Neighbours, but I was on, I did a movie called The Punisher with Dolph Lundgren, which gets some people excited.
Oh my goodness. Well, I always thought he was quite gorgeous, but go on.
Yeah, and a whole bunch of Aussie, TV shows on ABC mainly, and a couple of feature films. One in
That's incredible.
Yeah, I know.
That's incredible. That's just such a quirky little thing to throw out there and just gloss over. Wow.
Well, and you know what? I think in retrospect, I'm so glad I had that experience because it taught me so much about resilience, because there is nothing like being an actor and auditioning for roles where you get so many no's, and especially as a kid, learning to roll with the punches, and that no is not a personal thing. You just got to keep trying until you get that yes. I think that really, gave me a thick skin, which absolutely was important for my kind of startup career, because pitching for funding, you got to have that resilience and thick skin. You're going to get a lot of no's. So
yes. Okay, so you did the acting and then went to school, then went to do law. What was even going on in your head then?
My parents were very determined that I had the backup career. And so I did a commerce degree, but I kind of got bored of commerce and I kind of got bored of, auditioning and not getting anywhere after a while. And so I took a year off, went traveling and came back and decided to do law. So I I really loved law, actually, and I was surprised about that. And I worked at some top-tier law firms, but I was really passionate about technology. It was around the dot-com boom and, the Y2K bug, and there was a lot of exciting things going on. And I got really passionate about learning about new technology. And so I moved from being in-house, from being a corporate lawyer at a firm to being in-house counsel, and I went to Yahoo back in the glory days when Yahoo was
fantastic.
Yeah, the king of the internet.
Where it's big and fresh and new, and it was huge too. It was such a big name for anyone that is maybe slightly younger than us. They might not realise how big Yahoo was for a long time.
Definitely shows my age. But at the time, we were doing the first of everything on the internet. So we were the first online chat. We were the first, music streaming. We were the first, social media. So it was a really exciting place to be and a very entrepreneurial place to be. And there was a big startup culture there. And a lot of people from those days went on to start businesses. And I put that down to the empowerment that the business gave us to just, get things done in whatever way we needed. So I was the general counsel, I ran the legal team, but there was a gap in search marketing, in business development. So I was like, I'll do that. That sounds fun. So I just went and did that. And so it gave me the confidence that I could do things outside my, area of expertise.
Well, I love your point too, to the fact that acting teaches you about rejection, and of course, learning law is a great way, really, for you to maybe, especially when you've got all those entrepreneurs around you, to kind of have, I don't know, a certain confidence. I would think that kind of understanding how things work must give you, compared to those of us that have no idea about the law.
You know what? It did give me confidence, but it was absolute false confidence, because I remember thinking, yeah, I've done deals and I've seen how people put them together and I've seen how businesses run. How hard can it be? But yeah,
right.
It's very, very different when you're running it and doing it yourself. That's for sure.
I bet. So did your business UrbanYou come out of the Yahoo when you left Yahoo, or was there something else in between?
Yeah, no, it came out of Yahoo. So I met my co-founder at Yahoo. So Elke, she ran the PR and comms team there, and we both had this experience of being busy working professionals needing to get stuff done around our house. We both had kids and working full time and all of that, and yet finding household help was still this crazy offline experience. So you'd sit and read Google reviews for hours, compare quotes, wait at home for a tradie who would never show up, get a window between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. and have to take a day off work.
Yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare trying. Yeah, that's right. When they go, look, we'll be there anywhere between 8 and 1, and you're going, couldn't you just narrow it down a little bit more? So yeah, totally. So that was kind of the spark, was it? Was that was there something specific that happened that was kind of like a light bulb moment for you both?
Well, yeah, you know what it was? It was actually when Uber and all the on-demand businesses started launching, and we kind of looked at that and we went, this is nuts. So we can press a button on our phone to get transport, to get food, and yet to find a cleaner, we have to spend this crazy amount of offline time. Why can't we book services online? Why can't we go to Amazon and buy a book? And to book a cleaner, we have to do this offline thing. It seemed nuts.
It's amazing. I would almost say it would have only taken a woman to be able to kind of get that. I wonder, when you first started and you came up with the idea, did you run it past any guys and have them kind of going, what? Or was everyone kind of into it straight away?
Well, the interesting thing is that when we started, the name was actually Virtual Mum. So the idea we had in our heads was almost like we need a virtual wife, or we needed a virtual mum to run our lives for us, and actually at the time when we started, we weren't limited to cleaners and gardeners. We were thinking it was all of the things that we were outsourcing in our lives that could be brought into this online service. And so we actually went down, and this is kind of a good lesson for first-time entrepreneurs, I think. We went fully down the path of branding and building our first version of the site and everything. And then someone gave me a copy of the book, The Lean Startup, and they said, you should read this. And I did, and I was like, we've missed that critical step of talking to customers about our idea.
And it's so easy to do, though. It is so easy to do.
Yeah.
And so many people think, we'll build it and then we'll get the customers later because they'll completely get what we're doing.
Exactly.
So what happened when you went out to the customers or potential customers?
So we thought, okay, look, before we launch, let's just do a survey and see what people think about this idea. So we just did a survey and we sent it to everybody we knew, and the feedback overwhelmingly was, wow, love the concept. I love the service, but I mean, I'm not a mum, so I would never use it. Obviously, it's not for me, but great idea. And that included from men. And so we kind of went, aha, we're onto something here, but we're really limiting our market if we go with this name. And so we threw out the name and we rebranded. And what we actually...
Sorry, I'm just going, the rebranding. I mean, it's an expensive process and it's a long process. And it must have broken your heart to go, right, we're ditching that. We're starting all over again. Although UrbanYou is such a good name. I mean, it's fantastic that you did change it. But
Thank you.
Yeah, I feel for you.
Yeah, no, rebranding sucked. But I mean, and especially the beginning when we were bootstrapped, we had no money and we were so excited to launch, but it was absolutely the right thing to do. And actually our very first customer was a man, because here's the interesting thing about outsourcing household services, right, is that women talk about it with their friends. So if you need a cleaner recommendation, you'll probably reach out to one of your friends and go, hey, do you have a good cleaner? Men never have that conversation. Men never ask.
Because they've got no network to ask,
That's
I guess.
right. And so,
right. So was the guy, who was your first customer? I mean, in terms of a type of guy, was he a single dad? Was he a young guy or professional guy? Who was it?
Single professional dad who had kids in the house and needed cleaners and gardeners and everything. And he, remember him to this. It was such an exciting moment when we put up our site on Facebook, and within an hour we had made our first booking, and it was a man. And I think he's still an UrbanYou customer. I mean, we did all sorts of things to help him out. Yeah. Really, really great. And so, it was a good lesson.
The other insight from that, just from my own experience with my own business as well, is that I find that guys also will read about something, and if they like it, they'll just jump in and give it a go. Whereas women like to go back and go, I've just found this new website. What do you think to their friends? Like there's a lot more thought that goes in it for women.
That's true as well. Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, I interrupted you. Keep going. So you got your first customer. What happened then?
So, we got our first customer and, we just started building some traction. I think as another lesson for first-time entrepreneurs, our very first version of the site was not an on-demand booking experience by any stretch of the imagination. It was just a form on a WordPress site which said, do you need anything done around the house? Let us know. And again, that came out of reading the Lean Startup, because we'd actually gone down the path of looking at getting this site built, like we had in our mind what it should be. And of course, trying to replicate Uber was going to cost an insane amount of money,
Yes.
And it's not
baby
possible.
Steps.
Yeah. And so, what we learned was we needed to just validate, will customers buy this? Is there a need for this service? And so we did that with a very basic version of the site. And we did validate, like we started to build some traction, some experience, build both sides of the marketplace, which is a whole other ball game and story that I can tell you about. But
oh yeah, you must.
Yeah. And then we probably about a year in, we thought, we should go and pitch this to kind of the startup investment community and see what they think about it, because we'd kind of just been building it, on our own behind the scenes time.
But what made you think of going out? Were you sort of like, we need to get some funds for the next stage? Because I know a lot of women go, I'll just keep reinvesting all the money that we make, and as we grow, we'll put more and more money in and it'll grow that way, which is a very slow way of doing it, that's for sure.
That was us, definitely. And really, I think even the word startup for us, this was probably 2014, 2013. We weren't it wasn't such a big thing yet, startups. We were just
Yeah.
we were doing a business, we were building a business. But I think we knew that we needed to be able to publicly get up and talk about the business more than anything, like talk to partners about it, win customers over, sell the concept. And we'd never done that publicly. And so I saw an event come up, which was run by an organisation called Women as Entrepreneurs. And the idea of
great name.
The idea of pitching to, in a female-friendly environment appealed to me. It wasn't as intimidating. So we went along and did our pitch, and I didn't know, but the judges on that panel were very well known in the startup community. There was Phil Morley from Pollenizer, Katie Mile, who was from Westpac and Heads Over Heels, and a whole lot of people, Laura McKenzie from Scale Investors, that were very influential. And so we did the pitch and I won it. So I won that very first pitch that we did, and I was blown away. And
you are, like I said, amazing. Fancy winning the first pitch that you've ever got up and stood up about. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
What was the prize?
So the prize was obviously some mentoring. I think we won like some video content. I mean, I don't even know. It was, glory.
But it wasn't anything massive. It wasn't money.
It wasn't money. It wasn't money.
Right,
It was glory. But what I did get was some great connections from that panel. And what the overwhelming feedback was, you guys are a two-sided marketplace. You are going to need cash. If you continue to bootstrap this thing, other competitors will come in and they will have funding and they will be able to leapfrog you, and that kind of opened my eyes to the world of raising capital. And so we started to go to more investor events and more pitch events, and the more we pitched it, the better response we got. And, it was still kind of a new concept in those days, two-sided marketplaces. They were exciting.
Can I ask you, actually, as somebody who has no idea what a two-sided marketplace is, can you explain what it is?
Yeah, so a two-sided marketplace is, think Uber, where you've got users and suppliers, supply and demand, and you're bringing those two together and matching them in the middle. So what we had to do was build, so what UrbanYou does is it's a platform to book trusted household services. So on the one side, we have our supplier network, which are the cleaners, the gardeners, the tradies that we screen and verify. So we make sure all of them have police checks and insurance, and then we make them available for booking on the consumer side. And so what you have to do is you've got two sets of customers because you've got to find supply and you've got to build demand.
I see. Yes, that makes sense.
And then we're in the middle and we take a clip of the sales that go through. So there's a lot of examples now of two-sided marketplaces. I think they're quite popular.
Yeah, I just hadn't understood the actual term.
Yes.
So, okay, so you met all these amazing people, and presumably they've got a little kind of iota of maybe I should go and cap raise. What was the next steps? How did you do it?
The next step was a lot of being beaten down by investors.
How did I know you were going to say that?
Fundraising is a very difficult process. We had no experience in it, and it's particularly what we learned was it's particularly difficult for female founders for many reasons. Both conscious and unconscious bias exists in that capital raising process, and we would go and pitch this, outsource your household chores. Isn't life difficult?
to a whole lot of 60-year-old men.
And they just go like, no, I don't get it.
Who cares?
Not relevant to me. My wife does that.
Didn't think to maybe go back and ask their wives, what do you think of this idea?
Yeah.
But anyway.
And so we had, it was a difficult process. We did ultimately raise a seed round of $500,000, which was great, and enabled us to really, make progress on our platform, bring all the tech in-house, and then kind of prep ourselves for that next round. And when we were going to raise our next round of capital, we knew something needed to change. We just didn't quite know what it was. But we didn't want to go through that kind of soul-destroying process we had the first time. So,
oh, right. So in terms of the change you needed, you thought, we're going to try and do this in a different way.
Yeah, we're going to try and do this in a different way. There's something we're quite not getting about. We knew when we would go and pitch it, we would get this blank stare and like no interest. We just didn't understand. It was a good business. Like, we were making a lot of money. We were getting a lot of customers. We were growing. There was huge opportunity. We could see the same kinds of companies internationally, like booming. So what was it about the way we were pitching for funding that wasn't working? And the thing is, pitching for funding is it's a presentation, it's a sales process, it's storytelling. And so
what did you think you were doing wrong?
We didn't.
Just as a matter of interest, because there's been a hell of a lot of women who were maybe going to do it for the first time too.
Well, so what we did was we went and did the Springboard Tech Accelerator program, because that is specifically for female founders, and it's specifically around, you know, making a business ready to raise that next round of capital and providing the skills that women need to go and raise capital. And that was where we had our aha moment, where we realized that we were telling a room full of men about this emotive story, and women tend to tell their stories emotionally. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so we say, you know, it changes our life. It's such a burden having to do all of this unpaid work around the house, and like, that's great, but actually...
And the guys are going, how many customers have you got? What's your bottom line? Tell us your profit margin. You're going, hang on, let us tell you the story first.
Exactly. And they want to know numbers, because, and this like is such an obvious insight, but investors want to make money. Like, they're there to make money. So the idea is important, and the reason you did it is important, and the team is important. But at the end of the day, it needs to be able to provide them with that 10x return to make it, you know, if you're looking for venture funding, that's what you need to be able to prove. And so instead of telling that emotive story, we would say that we were doubling month on month. You know, that our customers, you know, 60% of our bookings every month were repeat business, that customers, our churn was below 2%, all of these things, which, and, you know, the market was $15 billion in Australia, like all of these things which showed this could be a really big business.
Yeah, nice cold hard number kind of. Yep. And even as you're saying it now, I go, oh yeah, absolutely. Who wouldn't want to invest in that? Exactly. It's funny, isn't it? Because you don't see it when it's yourself or if you're in a small team, but as soon as somebody else says it, you go, of course that's the way we should be presenting it.
And even now, like, I see so many women's pitch decks and it's all words instead of numbers. You know, and it's like just such an obvious insight, but tell me the story through numbers. That's what we need to be doing when we raise money.
Wow, that's just a great bit of advice. Tell the story through numbers. Okay. And so how did you go with that raise then?
So within 2 weeks of finishing Springboard, we raised our $1 million round. It was a very different experience for us. And then we just pushed the accelerator on our business, and we kind of in the next 18 months scaled Australia-wide, started acquiring competitors to really accelerate that growth trajectory. For us, I think we saw that it was really important to stay close to your competitors rather than treat them as your enemy. And I think that's a lot of it's a common mistake that people make. They're like, oh, this person's doing the same thing as me, I want to stay away from them. But we stayed close to everybody in our space. And so when some opportunities came up to acquire some competitors, we were able to have first look at those and jump onto them. And
that's just so amazing, because I have always, for years and years and years, been saying to people, don't think about competitors, think about collaboration. But I had never thought that, of course, then you know people that you could acquire as well. But I mean, I'm a big fan of keep your enemies closer. You know, like you might as well try and do something in that space with the person if you can, rather than competing for customers.
Absolutely. And I think in the sector that we were in, we were watching what was happening internationally, and we could see consolidation was a clear trend, that there were a lot of small players in the markets, but ultimately and this happens in most marketplaces, there's kind of one winner. Especially in Australia, the market's not really big enough to sustain lots of smaller players in a space. We usually end up with like a Seek or a Car Sales, or a Domain kind of dominating a space. And so, that was kind of the strategy that we had. And for us, the strategy was ultimately, we think one of the bigger players is going to come and acquire a company in Australia, and we wanted to be the biggest player locally to position ourselves to be that target. And that's kind of what happened.
I love your strategies. They're just so good. So how does that work? So do you just kind of get an email one day from someone saying, hi, we'd like to have a chat, we might like to buy your company? Pretty much. Did you actually go out looking for it, or how does it work? Because that would be so exciting.
So we were raising capital. We were doing a capital raise, and we were pretty close to closing on it when we got a approach from Oneflare, and they said that they were looking to build an on-demand capability, but they tried and they saw that it was very, very difficult to do well, because there's a lot of nuance in it. And could we have a
That
chat
you
about
guys were
working
doing it really
together?
well.
Yeah, yep. And so that's
Amazing.
that's how it all happened. And so we.
I feel all shaky just hearing this, because that would be so exciting.
It was a great outcome. Yeah,
it must have been such an awesome day when when that first inquiry came.
Look, you know what? It's hard as well. I think giving control up of your baby. And letting, that's also a tough thing to do, because we'd raised it up, and so we stayed involved.
So had you started the business thinking that you wanted to sell it, or was it kind of the idea? So it really was a baby that you thought that you might have 10 years later.
Well, this is, I think, also an important point about raising investment, is that if you bring on external investors, you need to be aware that the way they make money, the way they realise a gain on their investment, is by an exit. And
right. So you do need to sort of plan that exit before, before you go too long. I mean, yeah, I get that.
Yeah. And so
going.
If you want to build a business that you want to hold on to forever, it's not, taking external investment is something you should think carefully about. So it can happen. I mean, and there's unicorn examples of Atlassian and Canva, where certainly there are other ways for investors to realise, sell some shares along the way. But generally speaking, most exits in Australia happen by a trade sale, like a kind of mid-level trade sale, and that's something which is good. It depends what you want to do, but that's a path you go down, and that's a conscious decision I think you make when you take on external investors.
Right. So how long did you have the business for altogether?
We had it for 6 years. Yeah.
Oh, great. That's a good number as well. And so what happens when you've exited a business that's obviously taken up all your time and energy for the previous 6 years, and you've got this pile of money, but you no longer have that day-to-day kind of stuff you've got to do? What do you think? What are you thinking? What are you going to do? What did you do?
Well, it was tough because I was so used to being busy all the time. I threw myself into a kind of learning. I did my AICD company directors course, and I wanted to learn about angel investing. It took me probably about 3 months to really wind down and go, it's actually quite nice having some time back in my day. But one of the things I'd become involved in along the way. So, I did the Springboard Accelerator program, but I became very passionate about helping other female founders in their journeys. And so and they'd asked me to join the board. Actually, the same year I did the program. And so I'd become quite involved in that ecosystem around female founders. And it was a good opportunity for me to spend some time giving back to the ecosystem. So I did a lot of mentoring. I still do with, UNSW founders. I did an entrepreneur in residence stint at UTS startups. I did StartMate. I do StartMate. I mentor there and I'm invested there. And so I spent a lot of time doing that. And one of the things that I came to see was that we run a lot of programs for female founders and help them skill up and everything, and that's super important. And I think having those, you can't be what you can't see. So having role models and seeing other women do startups and build businesses is very, very important. But there's still a gap in funding, and the stats are really awful. So less than 3% of venture funding globally goes to women, and actually this year that number went down.
It's absolutely horrendous. Why do you think that? I mean, I know that some of the arguments that I hear are because 80 or 95% of investors are men as well. But why do you think that is? Do you think women exit from businesses in general and go off and do a whole other life and don't think about going back in, or why is it so heavily dominated by men?
I think that there's a few reasons. I think often women don't have that same ambition to build really big companies. As you said, like a lot of women think we should build lifestyle companies that we can run while we're doing other things, and don't see the opportunity sometimes. So changing the way women perceive opportunity is really important, and that's where those role models, I think, come into play.
Absolutely.
I think another reason is that often having a funded business means you need a tech co-founder, and women in general aren't the tech co-founder. They're the, business person or the product person or the marketing person. And so getting more women studying STEM at early stages is going to be important for getting more women to build technology businesses.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then often, as we say, I'll see two pitch decks, one by a man, one by a woman, and the man will go, this is a massive opportunity and I'm the person to take it there and this is going to be huge. And the woman will say, well, I'm going to give you some conservative numbers. I don't want to overestimate anything.
Yeah. I wonder whether, obviously that's what I'm trying to do with this as well, inspire women and get them to see that there are loads of women out there doing amazing things. But I wonder how we can shift that mindset to be thinking global and to be thinking big, because having a lifestyle is great, but you can still have a lifestyle and build a big business and then get out of it and basically either reinvest or have a great life where you're not compelled to have to work. So I wonder what it is or how we can change that mentality.
And look, that Springboard does
women.
A lot of work. Springboard and a lot of the other accelerators are trying to do that. So we're trying to, show women that there is global opportunity for their business and all of that. But I think a really important thing, as you mentioned, is having more women making investment decisions, because a big part of it is a lot of the ideas that women have, businesses that they start, are to solve problems that they've experienced. And men don't often connect with that problem. So let's just say, a couple of good examples recently, Modi Body, the period undies, or, Ovira, which has like a period pain relief. It's, really hard to get men to understand these problems. So
and some of the other ones that I see a lot of are domestic violence kind of services and things like that also guys probably feel a little bit uncomfortable being around. I just wonder, but one of the things that I'm interested in, you talk about how investors are all interested in stories by numbers, but that women like to talk about words. Do you think if we had more female investors that they would be more, so that pitch decks don't have to always be about numbers, that we can tell more of a story and take someone along the journey? Or do you think the kind of women that are going to invest, or it's always going to be a numbers driven thing?
Look, I think there's no doubt that an investor, whatever gender, is looking to make money. So the numbers will always be important. But I think being able to, as a female, being able to pitch to a woman, you can definitely, that storytelling is important as well. And they'll be able to connect on a different level with your problem. And they can then, that if they're an angel, they control that investment decision. But if they're associated with a fund, they can be your champion in that fund, which, may have other men involved in that investment decision process, but at least you have a woman on side with you taking your story forward. So that's kind of was my driver for starting to get involved in investing, because I feel really passionately about changing those stats. And I think the more women we have making investment decisions, the more progress we can make at getting more women funded.
Absolutely. And certainly in the She's the Boss group and the women that I'm hanging around with, they are wanting to change the world, disrupt industries, make big, massive changes. And I think, and that's what I want to see more of anyway, myself.
Absolutely.
In this space.
Yeah.
So now talk to me a little bit about your life with UrbanYou in terms of pivotal moments, because I often talk to people about how sometimes things can happen that seem like they're going to be an absolute disaster. Like you just go, oh my God, what am I even going to do? The rug's been pulled out from underneath you, and then it makes you shift or change or do something that you look back afterwards and go, actually, that was just a gift. So Have you had experiences like that you could share with us, where you learned something from a disaster to something great?
Yeah, I mean, many of them, but I'll give you one example about.
Yeah, great.
I'll give you one example around where, I mentioned earlier we had to grow both sides of the marketplace. And so our learnings around customer acquisition, which I think is very important for early stage companies. So,
Yes, I'm all ears. Tell me all.
So we decided that we would start with the supply side of our business. And the concept for us was, if we have this amazing network of the best suppliers, so the best tradies, the best cleaners, then, customers will come. Obviously, they all want the best. So I thought, okay, if I was going to go and do my own research about finding the best of these people, what would I do? How would I do it? And I thought, well, I'd go to all of the review sites. I'd go to TrueLocal and Yelp, and I would find the best rated providers. So we, in a probably very untechy way, hired somebody who we paid a silly amount of money to. And this was early days. We had put in, I think the capital Elkie and I put in was, I don't know, like $15,000 each. So we didn't have very much capital to start with. And so we paid this guy, I think, a couple of grand. So big chunk of that.
Yep.
To basically scour the internet and compile for us a list of the best rated providers in each of these categories. Now, what we didn't do was test whether that was the right strategy and just do one or two of them and get on the phone and see if it worked. We put in a month of time for him to go and do this and scour and spend all of this money, and then we got this list and we're like, right, this is the list. Now we're going to cold call all of these providers and convince them to come onto UrbanYou. And once again, for us, this was a brand new concept. Of course they would come online because it was a free lead.
Of course.
Yeah, why would you not? And so we split up, we had, I think, we started with about 4 or 5 different categories of providers, and we split it up between us, and we got on the phones, and one by one we got shut down. And no one would take our calls. No one would talk to us. No one was interested. And we would.
Oh, no. Why? Why? Because they just saw you as competition rather than, or they were like, no, we're not going to give you a clip of it? Or what was the pushback?
Firstly, if you're a top-rated supplier on TrueLocal, your phone does not stop ringing. You have got more work than you know what to do with.
Yes, of course. Yep.
And secondly, you know how to use the internet to get work. You've already gamed yourself to the top rating in TrueLocal, right? And so those are not the people that need help getting new leads.
Yeah, of course. So, but how do you then find people that aren't tech savvy and that don't have great ratings and know that they're good? What did you do? What was the pivot there?
Yeah, so we were
to use that awful word.
Yeah, so we sat back and we were like, okay, the guy at the top of TrueLocal isn't necessarily the best at what he does, actually. He's the best at figuring out how to become the number 1 rated provider. So there's got to be lots of people out there that do very good work that just have no idea about internet marketing. How do those people get jobs now? Like, what are they doing to find work? And we realized they were all on Gumtree. They would just...
Right, of course. Yeah,
they would just put a post on Gumtree, or they would answer posts on Gumtree, and they would try and get work that way. And mostly they were people at the beginning, so they had experience maybe working in a franchise, and they were just starting out on their own, right? And they just needed that leg up to start getting business. And so we started advertising on Gumtree and responding to ads on Gumtree. And all of a sudden we had more leads than we knew what to do with. Everybody came on board for free. It cost us nothing. And we realized that the customer segment for us, for the suppliers, were people that had experience but were just starting out to do their new business. And they used us as a tool to build that base group of customers. And
then did they stay with you after, or were you, do you think their initial idea was sort of use and then walk away, and then did they stick around? Or, if they're using you for a leg up to build their business, did they stick around?
They did stick around because we provided them with so much value. They didn't need systems. They didn't need to pay. If you think about anyone that's looking for advertising on the internet, right? If you pay a Google ad, you pay that Google ad and you pay for every click, regardless of whether or not someone actually buys your service. Whereas what we were
Yes.
offering was just there was no cost to get leads. If you took a job, then you knew what you were going to earn, like it was a set fee, and we got a bit of that, but there was no marketing cost.
But it was so easy.
It was so easy.
And I mean, anybody who's in the cleaning business or any business really, marketing is such a sticking point for people. So how did you build relationships with your customers as you're kind of growing this business?
Yeah, so for us, actually building a personal relationship with our suppliers was super important to us. What we actually saw as our kind of competitive advantage was this great supplier base that we had of high quality providers that stuck with us, that didn't leave.
Right.
You know, if you think about, especially one of the strengths of our business was the recurring nature of the services. So cleans done every week, every fortnight. That's like a great recurring revenue stream. You want to make sure those same cleaners are coming every week, every fortnight to do that job and not leaving. And so having in person, like we met them in person, we spoke to them in person, we could see what they looked like, whether they had a body odor issue, all of that stuff meant that we knew.
I mean, did you kind of get to know their background and their family, so you could go, how are the kids today? Was it that kind of close, or was it still more professional, but, stick with us because we've got lots of great plans for you?
A bit of both. So we had a wonderful business development manager, Emma, who built very close relationships. She looked after that network really tightly. And I think, for us, customer service was a real differentiator in our marketplace, because you see a lot of marketplaces that are purely tech-driven, and don't get me wrong, tech is super important. But what we recognised, and I think this is where being women really gave us a competitive advantage, we realised that having someone in your home, there's a level of trust that goes along with that. And
it's very personal, that's right.
It's very personal. And so being able to get on the phone and talk to somebody rather than just send an email to someone in, overseas that may or may not get your email today or tomorrow or the next day was really, really important to building that trust. And we did a really great job of that.
You must have, because to build up a company like that, this has just been such a good story, Noga. Thank you so much for sharing it with me. Now, we haven't got very much longer, but I want to hear a little bit more about Springboard and what you're doing with them, and how any women that are watching that might be interested in the courses and accelerating their businesses could tap into it. So can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing with them, and also StartMate, what that is?
Sure. So let me start with Springboard. So SBE Australia is the organisation that runs Springboard, and we don't provide funding, but what we do provide is programs and a really strong network for female founders. And we started with a program called Springboard, which was for later stage, high growth kind of stage companies. And what we found was we were getting so many applications from women at earlier stages, and we realised there was a lot of need to support earlier businesses too. So we now have 3 programs. We have an idea stage program, which is launching for the very first time, and we're super excited about that.
Oh, wow. When does that launch?
That launches, I think, early next year. We're running our first Explore program.
Okay, so early 2021.
Yep. So if anyone is there with an idea stage business and kind of wants to know, what do I do next? How do I validate? How do I know if I've got a business idea? I definitely recommend that. And then we have the next program, which is currently called E3, but it's around, I've got a business, I've got a few customers. What do I do next? How do I present this to investors? How do I talk about my business? How do I talk about myself? All of those things. And then the next program is Springboard, which is for kind of later stage businesses. And we also have a life science program, which is super exciting. The caliber of people involved is so high.
What do you mean? What's life science? Sorry.
Biotech, digital health.
Oh, yeah.
So
okay.
exciting.
Love it.
Yeah. But what I would say as well, if anyone is interested, we have our dolphin tank we call it the dolphin tank, not the shark tank, but it's our pitch event for this year's springboard cohort. It's going to be, I don't know the timing of this actually, but it's going to be on the 6th of November. So if this releases before then and you're interested in watching the dolphin tank, check my LinkedIn, because I've got a link to where you can sign up for,
okay, well, I will try and make sure that this gets out in time for the 6th of November. And tell me a little bit about StartMate.
Well, StartMate is one of the top accelerators in the country. It's was founded by Blackbird Ventures. It just had its 10th anniversary. I am just fortunate to be able to mentor there. It's a very, it's a hard gig to get, actually. They're very selective about who they allow into the mentoring stream there. But there's always some great companies, and I think a lot of Australia's top tech stories have come through StartMate. So I think one of the important things as an early stage business is surround yourself with a great network. You don't know what you don't know, and being able to get those connections from warm introductions to people that can accelerate your business can really make all the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And also we have a whole lot of people, I would think, that have established businesses as well. And a lot of people, I think, don't, particularly women, don't necessarily think about going out and doing a cap raise when their business has got to a certain stage. So, I would encourage them to get in touch with you as well through Springboard, I guess, through the Springboard part of the Springboard.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the other thing we do really well is build networks. So SBE, Springboard, we've got a lot of deep connections into the US. So for people looking to take their business overseas, there's no better platform.
Fantastic. And Noga, if anyone wants to get hold of you, what's the best way to do so?
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, but please add a note so I know why you're connecting and that you've seen me here, because we all get a bit of spam on LinkedIn, so it just helps to know.
We do. And I'll give you one little hint that somebody posted the other day, a digital marketer, and I've just tried it and it really works, is if you put a little icon in front of your name on LinkedIn, then if it's spam or a bot that's gone through, they'll only put the icon. It'll go, hi, icon, blah, blah, blah. And I thought that was so clever. So that's my little hack idea for anyone on LinkedIn that's fed up with all that rubbish that comes through our feeds.
Love it.
Now, Noga, this has been an absolutely amazing interview. Thank you so much just to hear your story, particularly, how you grew the business and all that great advice. You've just been so generous. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here, and I love your show, Jules, and it's great to support women in business. So thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Okay, so for those of you that have enjoyed the show, please subscribe to the channel. I've got new episodes going up every week. Also, there's a little notification button up at the top, like the little bell. If you click on it, it will let you know when we're posting new shows, but we have at least 2 new shows going up every week. We also have She's the Boss Chats podcast. Please go and listen to it. I've done over 70 interviews so far. I think there's only 35 up there. There's a lot more to come, and the women are mind-blowingly amazing. We also have a membership platform. I run Zoom lunches on Fridays for female founders, and we'd love you to come along. Just go to shestheboss.com.au, and I hope to see you for the next episode.